You've probably been taught that silence is awkward, that it means you're out of things to say, that it's a void to be filled. But what if silence wasn't empty? What if it was full of the very clarity, calm, and meaning we keep chasing? In a world that never stops talking, silence can feel like a threat. But maybe it's not the silence we fear. Maybe it's what it reveals. This video is about redefining silence, about learning why we avoid it and what it actually holds, and how embracing it might just be the most powerful step you can take toward clarity and peace. Let's start with this. When was the last time you sat in silence on purpose? Not scrolling, not listening to music, not even meditating with a guided voice, just quiet. Chances are I made you uncomfortable, and that discomfort, it's the doorway. Because most of us have confused silence with emptiness, and emptiness with lack. A silence isn't the absence of noise, it's the presence of something deeper. Here's what we often don't realize. The world is noisy by design. Companies want your attention. Social media thrives on stimulation. And we've been trained through algorithms and alerts to fill every spare second. Think about it. We fill the space in elevators with background music. We listen to podcasts while walking. We even check our phones during 30-second waits online. We don't avoid silence because it's boring. We avoid it because it forces us to feel. Silence leaves space for thoughts you've postponed, emotions you've buried, truths we've been too busy to face. But here's the secret. Those things aren't the enemy. They're the map. And silence is how we find it. Let me tell you about Nora. Nora worked in advertising. Fast-paced agency, deadlines, buzzing phones. She was always on. Until she burned out. And I don't mean tired. I mean shut down. Couldn't function burnout. She took leave, but instead of rest, she filled her time with noise. YouTube, calls, errands, playlists. One day, the power went out during a storm. No Wi-Fi, no music, no distractions, just her. And a quiet she hadn't heard in years. At first, she panicked. She felt restless, anxious, like she needed to do something. But then something strange happened. She cried. Not because she was sad, but because she finally felt. And that feeling, it became her compass. She realized the silence wasn't empty. It was telling her everything she ignored. That was the beginning of her healing. Let's break down why silence is so powerful, psychologically and neurologically. First, the brain in silence. Studies from the Journal of Brain Structure and Function have shown that silence, especially in 2-hour intervals, can actually stimulate brain growth. Specifically, it can boost the development of new cells in the hippocampus, the region associated with memory and emotion. That's wild. Silence doesn't just calm the brain, it builds it. Second, decision-making clarity. A 2013 study from PLOS-1 found that moments of silence help participants access deeper levels of reflection and self-awareness, the kind that leads to better decisions, more meaningful action, and less regret. Because when we're constantly stimulated, we become reactive. Silence allows us to respond instead. Here's another angle. Silence as a mirror. When we're quiet, we start to notice the tensions in our body, the thoughts that repeat, the emotions we haven't named. It's like turning the lights on in a room you've only seen by flashlight. You finally see the clutter. But you also see what's beautiful. That's the thing. Silence reveals not just wounds, but wisdom. You start to notice the intuitive nudges, the flashes of insight, the quiet truths that get drowned out by the noise. So let's get practical. How do you build a relationship with silence? You don't need to move the mountains or sit in a monastery. Start with 3 minutes. Literally, set a timer for 180 seconds. No phone, no music, no agenda. Just breathe. It will feel weird. Your mind will race. You'll want to grab your phone. You'll wonder if you're wasting time. You're not. You're rewiring your nervous system. Because the first thing silence gives you is space. And space is where clarity grows. After a week, try 5 minutes, then 10. You're not aiming for perfection. You're building tolerance. Intolerance becomes trust. Silence also teaches you to observe without reacting. To hear a thought and not follow it. To notice a feeling and not fix it. To witness yourself without editing the moment. This is where emotional maturity lives. Let me give you a metaphor. Imagine your mind as a snow globe. Every thought, worry, to-do, it's a flurry of snow. When you're constantly shaking the globe with apps, messages, content, you can't see clearly. But if you set it down, even briefly, the snow settles. And suddenly, the scene becomes visible. That's silence. Stillness lets you see, not just the world outside, but your inner one. And when you can see clearly, you choose clearly. Let's bring this into your daily life. You don't have to carve out hours. Try this. No audio during your morning routine. Walk without your phone. Eat 1 meal a day in silence. Journal before bed without background noise. These aren't punishments, they're invitations. Invitations to come home. Because the truth is, you're not overwhelmed because life is inherently chaotic. You're overwhelmed because you've lost your anchor. And silence brings you back to it. It reminds you, you don't have to perform every second. You don't have to chase every thought. You don't have to answer every ping. You get to be here, quiet, whole, enough. And here's the kicker. The more you practice silence, the less you fear it. It stops feeling like absence. It starts feeling like presence. It becomes a refuge, not a threat. A return, not a retreat. Because silence is not emptiness. It's everything you've been told too loud to hear. Let's go even deeper. There's a reason silence can feel so foreign and even unsafe. It challenges our modern identity. We live in a culture that rewards noise. The person who speaks fastest, posts the most, fills the space. That's who we're taught to follow. But wisdom doesn't yell, it whispers. And when your life is too loud, you miss it. Let's think about it this way. When was the last time you paused in a conversation and actually let silence hang in the air? Most people rush to fill it. We think it's awkward. We worry we'll look unprepared or uninterested. But in reality, that pause often contains the most truth. In Japanese culture, there's a concept called ma, the space between things. It's the silence that gives meaning to sound, the pause that gives rhythm to music, the space in art that creates contrast. In life, ma is the moment between reaction and response, the stillness that allows depth. We need more of that. In therapy, silence is a tool. A therapist won't always jump in when a client stops talking. They wait. They hold the space. Because often, the next thing that emerges is the real thing. And yet, we don't give ourselves the same grace. We interrupt ourselves, distract ourselves, try to outrun our own discomfort. But the silence isn't the enemy. It's the container. It's the place where you meet yourself. Let's address the fear that lives here. Many people say, I don't like silence because I don't like being alone with my thoughts. Fair. But ask yourself, if your thoughts feel like enemies in silence, how loud must they be in the background all day? Silence doesn't create discomfort. It reveals it. And anything revealed can be healed. What silence often shows us is regrets we haven't forgiven, dreams we've been afraid to claim, grief we've never let land, truths we've edited to please others. Yes, these are hard things to say, but they're also your path forward. Avoiding them keeps you stuck. Facing them sets you free. And here's the twist. Silence can be profoundly creative. Great artists, thinkers, and leaders often describe silence as a space where ideas are born. It's where dots connect, where insight sneaks in, where brilliance has room to breathe. If your creativity feels blocked, your energy scattered, it's not always about doing more. Sometimes it's about doing less, or simply being. Because silence isn't passive, it's fertile. Let's stop treating it like nothing. It's not nothing. It's the beginning of everything. Let's look at how silence can transform your relationships. We often assume connection is built through words, through conversation, shared stories, long talks. And it is, partly. But ask anyone who's experienced deep connection and they'll tell you, some of the most profound moments happen in silence. Sitting next to someone in grief, holding hands without needing to speak, watching a sunset in quiet company. These aren't empty moments, they're sacred. Because when you can be silent with someone and still feel connected, that's intimacy. It means you're not performing, not reaching, just being together. And that same principle applies to yourself. If you can't sit in silence with yourself, how can you ever feel at peace? We spend so much of our lives managing impressions, curating, editing, but the silence asks for honesty. It's a mirror that doesn't lie. And yes, that can be scary, but it is also healing. Silence creates a rhythm. And just like music needs rest notes, your mind needs pauses. Let's talk about burnout. Burnout doesn't just come from doing too much. It comes from processing too much, with no space to restore. Silence is that space. Even micro silences, 30 seconds between meetings, a quiet breath before replying to a text, pause before saying yes when your body wants to say no. These moments matter. They're when you re-enter your body. They're where decisions become aligned instead of automatic. They're where your yes means yes and your no means no. You know that phrase, listen to your gut? It's not metaphorical. The vagus nerve, which connects your brain to your body, plays a key role in intuition, emotion regulation, and decision making. It functions best when you're in a calm, parasympathetic state. You don't access that state through noise. You access it through patience, through stillness, through silence, through presence. Let's get real for a second. Silence can be confronting, especially if you've been using noise to avoid. If you've filled your days to avoid feeling lonely. If you've buried grief under productivity. If you've been mistaken busyness for worth. Then yeah, silence is going to feel brutal at first. But that's not a bad thing. It's a detox. It's the mud before the lotus. Because beneath all that noise, there's someone worth hearing. You. Your truest self doesn't shout, it waits. And silence is how you hear it again. Let me give you something you can do today. It's called a silence walk. Here's how. No phone, no podcast, no music. Take a 10 to 20 minute route. Walk at a pace that feels natural. Observe sights, smells, sounds, and sensations. When your mind wanders, gently return to the noticing. That's it. You're not trying to have a breakthrough. You're just listening. To your environment, to your body, to your breath. You'll be amazed what shows up. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just a gentle remembering that you are here, that this moment is enough, that you don't need to earn rest, you just need to receive it. Because silence doesn't demand, it invites. And the more you accept that invitation, the more you find out what's been waiting. Peace, clarity, home. Silence is not emptiness, it's the foundation. Watch the next video when you're ready, or better yet, before you think you are. So if you're waiting for a sign to slow down, to turn down the volume, and finally listen, this is it. Sit in the silence, not because it's comfortable, because it's real.